Nice. Very good. I like it. I like it. I like it. I like it.
Solid.
Especially because that's how I organize my notes. All right. So if you're ready. Welcome to Sacrilicious with Robin and Snerts, a Simpsons review podcast. I'm your lovable nerd Snerts, aka Joshua Stearns, and joining me is the equally delightful Robin. Don't have a cow, coward.
Hey everybody. Hey Josh.
Hey bud, how you doing today?
Fantastic. Really excited to be doing this again. I feel like every episode I get more and more excited, learn so much, and can't wait to do it with you each time.
Yeah, man, same here. Same here. So we did have a request from one of our super fans, Dr. Moxford, the raddest fan of them
The
all.
Doctor.
What did you get for us today, Robin?
Well, of course, he was saying we needed some Ralph Wiggum quotes, which we absolutely did. We were falling behind. So we pulled a couple of our favorites. The first one for you, Doctor, is
Me fail English? That's impossible.
That's
Classic.
impossible. And the other is another classic.
My cat's breath smells like cat food.
So there you go, Moxford. And we're playing these at the top because we don't have a lot of Ralph Wiggum in our episodes today. But we also wanted to, show our appreciation and support for your suggestions. And please keep on liking, listening, and all those other rad things. So if you're joining us for the first time, here's how it works. I pick an episode of The Simpsons. Robin picks an episode of The Simpsons. Then we talk. It's that simple. So now, without further ado, let's jump into our first Simpsons episode. Robin, what did you bring to us today?
Alrighty, Josh. Today we are doing an episode. We had talked about this, and we've been kind of trying to figure out which episodes we're going to do. And I said we should pull in some episodes that maybe we haven't seen some later years. And I took that
Absolutely.
to heart and chose their 350th episode, which is called Future Drama, which is a play on Futurama, Matt
Yes.
Groening's other television show. They show up actually in this. There's a little crossover in this episode. So
Absolutely. So this one was season 16, episode 15. The original air date was 4/17/2005, and it was directed by Mike B. Anderson and written by Matt Selman, the same Matt Selman who did our trilogy of Air. So Matt's back in the writing seat.
And this is about the time, and we know that there was really a heyday for The Simpsons where everything came together and gelled very well. And this little bit after that, start seeing what those changes are in these episodes. But this is one of the episodes where we get a glimpse into the future. And there's several Simpsons episodes that are like this, but this one in particular involves Bart and Lisa. So, future drama, we open with Bart and Lisa walking down Main Street, Springfield. They're downtown and they're starting to kind of fight verbally with one another. We get a great interplay there where Bart's like in a very classic pick on people mean. He says, there's your boyfriend, and he drops to he points to comic book guy, who is not the most best looking chap.
What do you mean, Robin? Are you saying I'm not the one for the ladies? Are you saying
He
I
is
may
our
struggle to
sponsor.
find love and acceptance in the world?
Well,
Or will I just spill a burrito on my shoe?
I know, and he picks the shoe up and he starts licking the shoe.
That was really kind
I
of
love
gross.
this part, Josh,
I was
'cause
so gross.
we
Yeah.
get a couple of our favorite characters that Lisa's like, well, there's your girlfriend, and they point to the crazy cat lady who
Yeah,
like,
she's great. I like the crazy cat lady. And she
And
finds like
then,
a baby in her basket of cats, which is really weird.
it's just odd. That was just an odd moment
Yeah.
in that one. They maybe have gotten into some mescaline at that point, the writers. So then our favorite is then Bart goes, "Oh yeah, well you love Mole Man," and he's at the bus stop, and old poor Mole Man, and Lisa's like, "No, you do. You're gay for Mole Man." Bart goes, "No, you're gay for Mole Man." And Mole Man, sadly as he does, he goes, "No one's gay for Mole Man."
Yeah, so I mean, I that's definitely reminds me of the schoolyard when I was growing up, because you would say like this is gay and that's gay, and I am happy
Mm-hmm.
as a society we've kind of hopefully in most circles moved beyond that kind of insults, but the line "no one is gay for a mole man" does make me laugh. Uh,
Absolutely. It
yeah,
is. It's one of the best moments, honestly, of this entire episode is him going, "No one's." I agree. This was, I think, even in 2005, they made a specific choice to have this joke.
right, absolutely. Yeah, and I
It,
don't think it's like homophobic or anything like that. It just shows how, the lexicon has changed and certain words have just kind of fallen out of fashion or are considered more insulting.
listeners, if you don't know, am gay, and didn't bother me at all. I love this line clearly.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but
I
it was
also
hilarious.
uh I also forgot to mention at the top that this was nominated for an Emmy but didn't win.
Really?
And John DiMaggio joins the DVD commentary, who is the voice of Bender.
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely another highlight. Like I said in our previous episode, when they have a voice actor on, and he's hamming it up. He's doing the Bender voice. He's doing his Marcus Phoenix from Gears of War and all that other kind of fun stuff. So
He
so
and
if
I were acquaintances, Josh, in
oh
Los
really?
Angeles.
You know
Yes,
John? Awesome.
he watched the Jets at the Barney's Beanery near my house, the
Oh, okay.
original Barney's Beanery, and um, he sounds exactly like Bender. So you're in the back watching your football game, and from the front bar, you hear Bender shouting, "Jets, come on, dig it!"
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
Some of them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Amazing. That's how I
Yeah,
met him. Is I was like, "I know who you are," and he's like, "Yeah," and then we had an
yeah.
absolute blast.
Yeah,
So,
he also has a commentary about how he sometimes like meets people and he does the voice and he's like, you're not him. You're obviously not him."
it's funny. I swear to God, you hear Bender shouting across the bar. It's to me, it sounds exactly like that,
Yeah,
and it was
cool,
fantastic. So
nice.
back to the episode is so they're fighting with each other, and you're gay from old man. They start punching each other and go to the ground, start rolling, and they roll in down a hill into Professor Frink's house, and that is how the
Glavin.
episode gets going. Clavin, um, and Frink says, "Bart and Lisa, I've been expecting you," and unfurls a welcome band. Says, "Bart and Lisa, welcome,"
Yeah, and I like how
and
he had
they
a banner with
gasp.
and Maggie, and then he like quickly takes down the banner that says and Maggie.
There's alternative time frame there, the
Yeah,
multiverse.
yeah, and much like Futurama with Professor Frank, or the professor in Futurama, I should say, Professor
Hmm.
Frank also has a machine that can see into the future. And it, I love how they go 8 years from Tuesday, very specific.
So, well, I love here. He goes, "Would you like to see yourselves as teenagers?" Bart
Uh-huh.
goes, "No."
No interest whatsoever in the magical machine.
Yes, he has built a machine so he can show people your future based on the one true science, astrology. Love Professor Frank. And
uh,
so we go to the future, and one of the things about episodes like this is the writers just start getting into their gags. And I'd say
yes,
a lot of this entire episode is gags about what the future will hold. And we know that there's a
100%.
whole milieu out there of Simpsons predicting the future. So just
Correct.
keep that in mind as we talk about these gags. We'll see which ones we think are going to come out. But the first thing we see in the future is this beautiful ET spaceship. It looks like the spaceship from ET
Yeah,
comes
it
out
definitely
and
has a
lands.
Steven Spielberg feel to it.
Oh, absolutely. It's you landed in the to the guy who collects the garbage comes out, gets the garbage, and then it very dramatically ascends back up into the heavens and then drops down at the next house and picks up their
I also
garbage.
like the little details of him just kind of throwing the can back and not really like placing it on the sidewalk. He just tosses it. He's like, whatever. um,
and
I also found it interesting that Matt Selman said his inspiration for this episode was breaking one of Matt Groening's rules, which is never having any of the characters age.
oh,
So in addition
interesting.
to having all those fun little gags and whatnot, it's also interesting to me that Matt Selman is like, well, this is my idea for a plot. Fuck you, Matt Groening. I'm going to break one of your rules.
What did we discuss? It? How many episodes are there like this? Maybe 3, 4 out there.
There's a handful
Glimpses.
for sure. Yeah. But
Um,
it is fun when they go into the future. I also so we have like Bart and Lisa coming down the stairs, right? And Marge takes what looks like an outdated piece of technology, a Polaroid photo, but then and she's like flapping the picture like you would back in the day, and then it turns into a giant photo cake. And I really thought that was fun.
it's one of my
I also
favorite.
thought it was dangerous because if Homer figured out how to work that, he would just like be taking pictures of everything and be like, "Ooh, lamp cake! Ooh, toilet cake! Ooh, sponge cake!" You know. So I really like that visual gag, and then
Well,
Marge has a great line too. I wonder if you're thinking what I'm thinking. It's called "We can do anything now that scientists have invented magic." That's a great line.
well, I do want that cake though. So
Cake.
we are in the future. I love how like 8 years was 2013. We have spaceships
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah.
Um,
The future
so
today.
so they're standing there going to the prom. Marge is taking the picture, and then Homer comes in, and Marge and Homer have separated. And
Boo.
like you're like, oh,
Boo. I do not like that at all. It bugs the
I
hell
know
out of
it's
me.
sad. Well, but they just it's triggering, but it's not maybe the longest lasting. We know they're meant to be together.
Mm.
And Marge, but they start fighting, and Marge's like, Homer, you can't just come in here. And Bart has a great line. He goes, can you please stop fighting in front of us? And Homer goes, why? Is it messing you up? Ooh. Homer. There's another great gag right there, funny future stuff, Josh. That's this video postcard that of Maggie
Yeah, it's
that
kind of
she
like a
sends.
GIF, you know?
Yeah, well, it's a video gives you it's a long give you see like the whole.
Yeah.
She's in Alaska and it's like a nice beach. And there's this emaciated polar bear that wanders into the frame.
That polar bear was drawn with a lot of detail. Like
Oh,
it looked really, really
heartbreaking.
sick.
I
Yeah.
love what Homer says. He goes, serves them right, stupid wildlife.
And that's how they get out of having Maggie be in the episode, is that she's just off in Alaska. Because famously, Maggie doesn't speak except for one word that was done by Elizabeth Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, they always in these future episodes find a way to humorously like get Maggie out of the picture or to ensure she doesn't talk.
That's exactly it. So we get a glimpse into the future now, and their dates show up, and Lisa's dating Millhouse, which is been an ongoing gag since like the first. Millhouse loves Lisa, and
Yeah,
she's
and
not
it's
the most
teenage
social butterfly.
Millhouse with a starter stash, and he is like roiding out.
He's
Uh,
stacked. He's
but
built.
he doesn't do
He's
leg
built like
day.
the Hulk.
Yeah, but it's all upper body like showman muscles. Like it's not like the legs. He has like the really skinny legs and the really big body. He looks like some kind of
Oh,
weird
it's
superhero
hilarious.
cartoon from back in the day,
He is a
where they
he's
didn't
a
have
callback to
proportionate
that.
bodies.
In towards the end where he talks about like it's because I don't have enough mass in my calves.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah,
hardest place to gain mass.
yeah. And then it it's just poor Lisa. I mean, like, your self-esteem must be so shitty if Millhouse is the one you end
Oh
up with.
god,
But then it cuts
she's
back to
disappointed in
Frank,
herself.
and it comes back to Frank, and Lisa is like disgusted, obviously, right? And I love this whole line. Like he starts explaining, he's like, "No, you don't understand, Lisa. You fell for Millhouse after he saved you from a house fire, but then you later found out that he started the house fire." And I just Love that joke. And then Frank is like, actually, I can show you a picture of like what your face looked like when you found that out. And then it cuts to like Lisa
Oh,
with like in junior high with braces or something like that. And she's just like, ah, like
just
total
that
shock
like
and disgust in his face.
shocked look on her face,
Um,
horrified.
yeah. And then what do you think of Bart's girlfriend?
Oh, I think that Jinda is fantastic. This is like the she was a good girlfriend for Bart, but didn't end up being the final one, as we find out. But Jinda, she's cool. Like she and Bart are in love. It kind of paints Bart as a romantic, and like they're really kind of into each other, and it's kind of cute, I think.
Yeah, I
But
like
I
her look
love,
too. She's wearing kind of like a similar dress that Lisa would wear, like an orange dress, right? With but she has a leather jacket on and some boots.
yeah,
And then
yeah, and she's got the cool
our guest star
hair.
for her agenda is Amy Poehler.
Oh, is that right?
Yep,
I did
yep.
not look that up.
And in
I'm glad you did.
I think in
I
the
love me some Amy
commentary,
Poehler.
I didn't think about it either, but it was mentioned in the DVD commentary,
Mm.
and they were talking about this was before Parks and Recs, but I thought
Yes.
she did a great job voicing Jenda, Bart's
It,
girlfriend.
I think Jinder is great in this. They have the first interaction is great where Jinder's like, Bartman, you're looking crooked. And this is how the writers are like, this is what
Yeah.
they do to tell you it's the future, is like the lingo has changed. And and Bart goes, hey Jinder, how about some forehead? Because apparently this is how what's taken over for like shaking hands.
Hey, everybody! Bart, you're looking crooked.
Hey, Jinda, how about some forehead? Oh.
That was jagged.
Yeah, they definitely
So
both have that skater surfer vibe, but of the future.
they seem like fun though, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
they seem like a great couple for each other, especially at that age.
So now we get one of the better parts of the this going to the prom, and later we go to graduation, which is really fun. So you get old Willie to start out with, which is this is where you see a couple of jokes make it in that may have gotten cut in another one. I do love the music they're playing. Take on me,
Sure.
which is like classic prom music, kind of doing a pseudo John Hughes thing for this high school. You got your first, future Springfieldian is Nelson, who's who's come with both Sherry and Terry, who are both pregnant with their twins that are going like ha ha in the
Yeah.
womb.
I don't know how that. I mean, Sherry and Terry seem to share a lot, including their man.
Exactly. That's so you got Skinner coming out. He has a couple of funny lines where he says, welcome seniors and sexually precocious underclassmen. That's racy there a little bit.
I also
But
like how he says you're going
they're
to go off to college or Gulf War 5, Operation Find Our President's Head. And then it goes, USA,
USA,
find
find
the
the
head.
head. USA, find
Yeah.
the head.
Yeah,
We
that
got
was great. And then we do have, I think, maybe our only Ralphism of the entire 2 episodes today that we're going to be discussing,
I
which
can
is
use the potty now.
yep. And I also like how the punch gets spiked, but
Nelson,
apparently it's
yeah.
like LSD because he's
Yes.
having a trip, man. Like, and it goes south.
Oh, it goes south. It starts off well, but then
Yeah.
and we get a good Ralph like my Ralph is pretty good. I
Yeah,
like
that's pretty good.
Principal
That's pretty
Curdy in
good.
the scene.
Also, do you
It's the
remember?
lingo.
Oh yeah. He goes through all the
No
drugs.
booze, kick, puff, max, stem, or turb.
Turb kills.
Turb kills.
Yeah, I also like how. Do you know who now owns oh shit! I gave it away. Do you now know who owns Yale?
Yes, exactly. The Mick Yale, as it's called.
Yeah.
We got
You're graduating.
this is where Jinda, like you could see how she could be a bit much. She
Yeah.
and Lisa are in the bathroom and talking about like, Bart tells me you got into Yale, and she's like, yeah, even though McDonald's owns it now and everything, but I could never afford it if it weren't for the Montgomery Burns scholarship, which was going to come back later.
Now,
But
why did he have to start giving out the scholarship, Robin?
Jenny goes, Isn't that the thing he had to do for stealing Christmas? And Lisa goes, "You're," Lisa says,
Yeah, I miss Christmas.
"Yeah, I miss Christmas."
uh, I
And
also
Gina goes, "I don't."
yeah,
I do love the futurism where the sinks and the soap are like voice activated, but you have to be
right,
stern with it. She's like, "Sink, activate,
yeah.
soap, activate." It's pretty funny.
It's not your old
Joke
Jean-Luc Picard Earl Grey hot, type of thing.
exactly.
It's very very violent, direct words. So maybe that's how we have to talk to Siri to get that fucker to
Like it's the
work.
tone. You go, yeah.
I also like how Martin's dating a robot.
Yes, Martin's built himself a robotic companion who apparently doesn't even like him much.
Yeah, no, the robot, the robot is over it, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, I like Millhouse dancing with Lisa, and he's clearly in rapture. He's so in
Oh
love with
yeah.
Lisa, a big part of this, and he's got his head just like he's wrapped around her with his head on her chest, and she has a look on her face like, I don't think I
He's also so short. Like Lisa,
he's so
like he comes
short.
up to like Lisa's shoulder, you know. So he's like just a short, buff
He's
starter
probably
stash
because he's been
motherfucker.
doing roids.
And then for some reason, Otto is driving the limo that they take away from the prom, and
Like a
he must,
maniac.
yeah, he's driving like crazy. Then he gets out of the car, strips down to all his clothes, goes over to a cliff, and goes, "I know I can't fly, but I can glide." And so he must have drank the punch. What do you think, Robin?
Oh, he's on something, Josh. He's on something strong because he does try and glide. It does not go very well.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy Otto, and bye bye, Otto's gone.
So at this point, the Bart and Jinda have headed to the makeout spot in Springfield, which they have named Contraception Overlook. It's just
Yeah,
a bunch of
fantastic
people in
name.
steamy cars,
Yep,
and
yep.
they're smooching. They're going to town on each other, and they're into it. And Bart, they break apart, and Bart goes, "Jinda, I'm nervous. I think I'm ready to go all the way." He's adorable when he's doing it. And Jinda says, "Bart, don't be nervous. Sex on prom night is as American as the 51st state, Saudi Israelia."
I love that. I love the
There's a
Saudi Israeli joke. That really was
little
that made me laugh.
little
Uh,
nod to politics in the United States right there.
yeah, and then I also like how Bart immediately goes, like he could just go for it and get some action, clap some cheeks, but
Mm-hmm.
instead he goes way overboard and pops the big question.
He does. It's really actually adorable. I think him in this scene. He's like, "I love you. Will you marry me?" And he pulls out a nice looking ring.
Yeah, I don't know where we got that.
And this is where Jinda, she's not as into this relationship as he is. She's like, "That's really sweet," but she says, "Well, that's a 3-year commitment, Bart."
Yeah, that's really. I thought that was pretty funny as well. And then Bart goes through his terrible plan of how he's, working shitty jobs and whatnot. And Jenda kind of thinks it over for 2 seconds. Doesn't take her long. She's like, "I think I outgrew you, Bart.
When?
When, Jenda? Just this minute." I love the honesty of that. Just this minute. Quick little
Just right
kiss
now.
on the cheek, and she's out of there.
Mm,
Bye
it's
bye.
this.
So long.
Oh, so sad. Bart is brokenhearted. I love this next part. I know you did too, where the Wiggum and the other two cops come busting through the forest,
Yeah.
and they're full Robo cops.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm playing the RoboCop game Rogue City right now, which is a lot of fun. To prepare for that, I watched RoboCops 1 through 3, and it is definitely an homage to RoboCop. I wasn't sure
Oh,
like if it
big
was some
time.
other kind of sci-fi thing, but they all look like Alex Murphy without the helmet on. I also love
Except that.
how Chief Wiggum, to console Bart, he's like, "Ah, man, you want some chicken?" And then he opens up his chest, and there's a full-on rotisserie chicken spitting. And you're like,
Hold
"Just
on, in
use your
his
hands. We're family
abdomen,
here. Don't worry about
there's no
it."
heart, no organs. It's
Yeah,
just a rotisserie
rotisserie
with some.
chicken, which
You
makes
know, you
me
can
think
imagine.
Robin, what are in the chassis of the other two cops?
Oh, I mean something delicious. One's
right?
got like cheese dip, and the other one has like pretzels or something.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was like a full thing where like one has mashed potatoes, the other one has mac and cheese, and it's kind of like a Boston market, type of scenario where
Yeah,
like,
but Josh, the one with mashed potatoes, where does he squirt the gravy out of?
oh, no follow-up questions. He's just squirting gravy all over them taters.
Oh, I do love the image there
Fantastic.
though of Wiggo and me, with the rotisserie chicken. You can imagine he's gonna.
Yeah,
They're like, all right, we could give you superpowers, or we could give you a rotisserie chicken. He's like, definitely.
the chicken. I'll take the chicken.
So Bart is in the future. Jin has broken up with him. And Bart in the present is not really liking this. He's like, I'm tired of it. I want to look at something else.
Yeah,
And they have like the remote. It's like, oh crap, what was the original device that we all used to record things?
a
The
VCR.
bloop 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 bloop. No,
Oh, Tubi. Tubi.
no. What was the original one called?
Oh no,
I'll look it up right
No,
now.
I know. No, it's not Tubi. I know what you're talking about though. Um, all right, yeah. So they're going through these, like they're kind of failed bits. I almost feel like these are like episodes that never made it. Like they're in the writings room and they're like, I don't know, Vice President Cletus, and they're like, no, we're not doing that. But you stick it aside for TiVo. TiVo is what you were thinking of.
TiVo, I just had it. I was just about
Because
to,
it came to me like I knew
because they
you
do
had
the
it.
bloop 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 bloop
Yeah,
bloop bloop.
yeah. It is a TiVo reference. Tubi is also a great streaming service, though. If you guys don't know about Tubi, you're missing out. But enough ads for people who aren't sponsoring us.
Right, exactly. The list of other alternative future storylines,
Yeah.
I felt like it was like failed ones from the story room by the writers.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was saying. Yeah, 100%. Like it's just we don't have a full-on like whatever 23-minute episode of Vice President Cletus, but we can do a couple bits here and there.
Exactly.
I also love how
Flanders' revenge.
I also love how Homer spent all their money on an underwater house. And so like they're there with Bart and Homer, right? Consoling each other. And they decide to go have like a night on the town. And I love how they had the legit like scientific, it takes 3 hours to decompress. So you can go to the service.
So yes, Homer, Bart is at Homer's house. He's consoling him, and Homer has purchased, and we find out later, has blown all of their savings on an underwater house. And I love the one where these fish are stealing his patio furniture, which of course is useless underwater. And he goes, "Stupid flounders." So,
yeah, I mean, obviously a little homage to Stupid Flanders.
Hey, come back with my patio furniture! Stupid flounders.
Stupid flounders. The decompression chamber is going to take like 3 hours, but they come out of the decompression chamber, and Homer, another future 8 years, from then, 2013, new invention is the first hover car.
Yeah.
Homer's bought the first ever hover car, and it's like smacking the asphalt and the sparks are flying, and he's like sitting there in his drop top,
and it has a very 50s 60s design, with the giant fins, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
it kind of reminds me of like a T-Bird or something.
It's how people used to guys especially used to like fix up old cars.
Yes, exactly.
And they make them look real good, but they didn't always work quite well, and you get a little like out the back.
The backfiring and all that kind of stuff.
They go through a couple of gags here while they're driving. Future funny gags. There's a dimensional portal through the mountain pass.
Correct.
Where they go through and they pick up Bender from Futurama.
Yep.
So callback right there.
And then Homer calls him a loser and throws him out of the car. I didn't find that joke funny.
No, I agree. I think we're both on the same. Some of these are just
but
like,
the DVD commentary, John was like, "There goes your pal Bender, pop up, pop it up, pop." And that made that joke funny. So I find it interesting that every once in a while, like I won't like the joke or I don't laugh at the joke on the actual episode, but if I listen to the DVD commentary, either a voice actor does something funny, or they kind of talk about the context of the joke or why they came up with it, and it makes me appreciate it a little bit more. Still though, like I was really kind of hoping that the three guys would just be going to Moe's together and getting a drink. But
I
then
know.
in the future there's a Futurama crossover. Good job, Josh. Way to say things over and over again. uh
It brings us
but
all back.
there
So
is
they're heading.
an episode down the line where there's a Futurama crossover,
Oh,
which is
absolutely.
fun. So
I'm
of
sure
course,
there's even
I
another
also like
callback to some other episode too. We'll find out.
there's just this is one of those moments too where all those sign gags, like they're just driving through future Springfield, and
Hmm.
there's just sign gag after sign gag after sign gag. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, folks, this is when you want to pull out the remote and hit pause, because you're only going to see it for a second, and it can be rather hard to read and like kind of get what they're going at, but also very funny.
I love also that Marge's sister, either Patty or someone comes out and she has a tail. Like that's the new fashion.
Yeah, because they have like a plastic surgery tail store of some kind. That's pretty fun. And of course, like they're driving through all this stuff, and what do? They parallel
They're
park right
heading
in
to
front of
Moe's. So
Moe's.
so of course they're going out on the town. Homer takes Bart to Moe's, to the bar, to like meet somebody. And we get there and Moe has a clone. It's really funny back and forth between them two. Goes on a couple of times this episode. He's like, watch the attitude. Wait, you watch it. You came from my back fat. Ooh,
Would you want
but
a clone, Robin, of yourself?
oh hell no. Oh hell no. Mm-mm.
Just me,
I
just
barely
me.
control myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I also
So
like how Homer sees a couple ladies right in the corner. He's like,
yeah,
two of my favorite letters, easy.
easy. And of
uh,
course, it's our favorites. We've talked about this last
yep.
episode. It's Edna Krabappel and Miss Hoover,
Yes.
the teachers from the elementary school. And I love this scene, Josh, because you know, Homer's getting along very well, so he beckons Bart to come over to the table. He's like, "Come on,
Yeah. Yeah.
like meet Edna Krabappel."
Yeah. And
Where
of course, she's
Bart
like
goes,
that's my fourth grade teacher. And I love how
"Ooh,
Edna is kind of down
ooh."
the clown.
Oh,
Uh,
Bart goes, "This is weird," and Edna goes, "Want to make it weirder?" It's so
yeah.
creepy, Josh.
I also like how she says we both can do better.
Yeah,
Like when he says no, and he's like, yeah, we both can do better.
yeah, we both can find true love out there somewhere.
And then Bart goes into a speech about how if you only try it in the fourth grade. And so, like, of course, they cut back to young Bart, and he is not paying attention whatsoever.
Lisa's like, Bart, maybe you should pay attention. Your future self is trying to tell you, like, maybe you shouldn't be such a screw up.
Yeah, and he's like throwing
Shh.
cards into a hat, and then he misses. So he's like, now I got to start over.
Oh, it's a funny bit. So then we have a scene between Bart and Lisa where they're commiserating because now Lisa's also broken up with Milhouse, which we're all always happy about.
Yeah.
And Bart has a funny line. He goes, "How did Milhouse take it?" And he cuts to Milhouse. He's like, "Milhouse mad.
Yeah.
Why Lisa no love me? Mom says Milhouse handsome."
Yeah, he's definitely hulking out with his roid rage.
And so, but this is the point where Lisa says to Bart, says, "Hey, maybe if you show some damn initiative, because in the previous scene, he was like, I'm going to learn how to cut meat and then we can live in a trailer." She's like, if you can show her some initiative, then maybe she'll take you back. We also get a little of Marge dating Krusty in this scene.
Yeah, I don't like that either, but it is kind of funny that she would take the next date like that we know of after breaking up with Homer, because Homer and Krusty the design is very similar.
Very similar.
That's why they have that episode Homie the Clown, and Homer is like one of the most successful Krusty clowns out there because they're drawn very similarly.
I think the entire purpose of Marge dating Krusty is that it really could have been anybody, so they can do the joke later where Moe is like biding his time while the other people are fighting around.
I also think it's the thing because they thought it would be funny that Bart's hero is now dating his mother. So there's that angle of it as well. So that's a fun little bit. But
Never
I
have
also
your
love where
hero
Bart
date your
says he's
mom.
going to get some initiative, and he goes to the Quickie Mart.
Yeah, so now he's working at the Quickie Mart, and that's his. And I think one of the pieces that we both really found funny was the octuplets. The
Yes.
Nahasapima Pedalon octuplets are in jetpacks running the store with like an
Yep.
iron fist.
And it's keeping that 50s future theme. So, friends who like Fallout or like those old space age type of designs. It's very kind of clean, and it has like the little like bubbles, or not bubbles, but circles like kind of going from the base of it, and they're all flying around and ordering Bart around. One thing they did mention on the DVD commentary is that they didn't really age the octuplets very much. I mean, it's supposed to be like
No,
8 years, so they're supposed to be like 9 or 10, but they still kind of look like they're babies.
they do look
Um,
like they're babies.
yeah, and they made like Apu like super old with a very long beard and whatnot.
Yes, he's had a rough time, probably because of the
Yeah,
octuplets.
yeah, and then they
But
have a
my
fun.
favorite,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say my favorite with the babies is they're flying around the jetpacks and they're just tyrants. Is when he
Yes.
spits on the floor and he goes, "You missed a spot," and Bart's like, "Yes, sir, Mister Geet," and he goes, "I'm a noob, you racist cracker." So we have a good throw in a good cracker
Yeah,
there. I do love the word
I also
cracker.
like how Bart goes over all and goes all through the forbidden zones that exist in future Springfield. There's a lot. There's a lot, and so Apu gives them a task to go through the unicorn clams,
The
forbidden
Uniclams.
zone, to deliver groceries to who?
So he goes to Mr. Burns' house. He talks about it as like an old shut-in.
Yeah,
So we're at Mr. Burns' house. And Bart comes. He's been chased by the Uniclams, and he walks in, and he walks to the room, and he sees Mr. Burns is tied up, and Muscle's like, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, ooh," and our friend Snake busts out from behind the door. Is like, I've got you covered with my phaser / cell phone, dude.
and that is such an American product to combine a cell phone with a weapon, a projectile weapon. That just seems
Oh,
like
it's
something that
coming.
America would totally come up with.
That's the one we should put a pin in that one because that might happen soon.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're at least gonna have like a knife switchblade coming out of it.
There you go.
Uh, but so in the scene, Snake gets a call on his weapon from his girlfriend, and
Right.
they start arguing about dinner.
Yeah.
It is hilarious. We love Snake. I think you agree. It's one of those
Yeah.
characters that's around every once in a while. That's just a great character.
They also had some fun comments about like, this is basically our day during the office. It's like, I don't know, what do I want for lunch? Like, I'll have whatever
it's
you're
like
having. No,
Monday.
not that. That kind
The
of stuff. And it was
juxtaposition.
very funny because the writers are like, that's basically what we do. That we didn't have much inspiration. We didn't need to like go outside the box and like think of
Mhm.
something really clever. This is just a real life thing that we deal with every day. With the old lunch orders there.
They're literally writing Snake. It's like, what do you want for dinner?
Yeah.
Krusty Burger.
So Bart saves the day and
So
stops
he
Snakes
does.
from
So he
being
knocks him
robbed.
out with his giant, this giant diamond.
Yeah.
And Burns is figure, blessed urchin, how can I repay you? And Bart's like, the diamond. He says, no. How about the Montgomery Burns scholarship?
Because he
which
says,
of course, Lisa got.
Burns states that he wants his diamonds to be reformed into coal, the most valuable substance around. And I love that whole idea that he's just collecting diamonds to find a way to like
To turn them back into
recalibrate it to
coal.
turn it back into coal. And apparently that's a real scarce. And then we get our boy Smithers, which you and I like. And I know you were talking about this as well. We are shocked because Smithers shows up with
a
woman.
lady.
Yeah.
Which is a great part of this. And Burns is like, where were you? And he's like, I was out on a date, and you know that. And Bart goes, but I thought you were, And Smithers goes, no, I'm straight as long as I take these injections every 3 hours.
Yeah. And then so he immediately injects himself and shouts, I love boobies. Which just coming from Smithers like is hilarious. So I really found that joke. That might be my favorite joke of the whole episode, is just that he has to inject himself with this so he can be
It makes
straight
him
and
love
date
boobies.
women. Which makes me think that future Springfield isn't like very tolerant to the LGBTQ plus community.
That's probably true. Never tell her but much was.
Yeah.
But the important thing in this scene is that Snake and Burns talk Bart into taking the scholarship because
Right.
Burns says, hey, thank you for this, but so I'm going to give you the scholarship to Yale. And Bart's like, no, I can't do that because that's my sister's. I don't want to take it. It's very sweet, but it's very sweet to his sister this episode. But they said, hey, the ladies love an Ivy Leaguer. And
Yeah.
Snape's like, they totally do, dude. And
Yeah.
so he thinks he can win Jinda back with the Montgomery Burns scholarship, but he has to take it from his sister.
And then we have a
And
great visual gag of current Lisa and future Lisa choking out Bart. So you have, like, on the big screen, you see the future choking, and then on the bottom of the screen, in the real time, you see him there. So
it's
I really
great.
thought that was funny, and good. And so then,
That was a great moment in that.
now we're off to graduation.
We're off to graduation. This is another one of the moments where you get a lot of these characters. So in the audience, I love the sign Josh where it says, "You are no longer the future because you're no longer
Yeah.
children."
Right.
So we're looking at the audience first, and this is the callback. Is Homer comes in and marches with Krusty, and Krusty's like, "Oh, this isn't weird." Bart and Homer's like, "No, it's not." And he just immediately starts punching him, and they get into a big
Yeah.
fight. And it cuts to Mo, and Mo is
Mo
like,
and Clone Mo.
Mo and Clone Mo going, yes, fight. And then the third clone is a spider comes down a call back to the Fly. And he's
Yeah,
in Mo's face.
I
He's
thought
like,
the spider was a little much for me, but I did like
the
their
only reason
suits and
that
flowers with the
is,
little hat. I like how they had the flowers
oh
ready to
yeah,
go.
just biding their time because
Yeah.
Somebody in the writers' room just loved that joke and like got it through. I think is what's going on. But so of course Skinner gets up and calls up the valedictorian. Lisa says, "Our valedictorian who's going to Yale in the fall," and she has to kind of jerk him on the shoulder and whisper that she's not going anymore. And he goes, "She's going to Hot Dog on a Stick Management School."
I love that. Hot dog on a stick is one still around, and that is Lisa's best opportunity, right? She can't go to a community college. She can't go to the local state school. She has to go to Hot Dog on a Stick management camp.
The next tier that she could afford. Oh,
Yep.
it's so
And
sad.
so then
But-
the whole ploy, I guess, works, right? Jenda takes Bart back because now he's going to go to Yale.
Exactly, because now he's going to Yale, and Jinda and Bart are back together. And there's a good there's a good moment between Skinner and Bart where it's the graduation, and he calls him up to graduate, and goes, "Bart Simpson." Bart goes, "What?" And he goes, "Why don't you mail the diploma to your butt?" And Skinner has a great line where he goes, "I can finally tell you, Bart, you really press my cider." Everybody gasps. He just said the most horrible thing.
Yeah, I mean,
does.
The future does change things, but I kind of laughed at that too. And I was like, of course, God, that's his best insult that he can come up with after years of torment from this boy. All right.
You press my, and everybody's just shocked by this, of course.
Yeah, and then what graduation would be complete without an after graduation party?
Yes, of course at Homer's, the cool dad's house under the sea.
Yeah.
This is one of those scenes where they press for some of these jokes a little bit. You get a call back. You've got Nelson there with the twins again. They've had the babies, and you particularly liked his bit right there.
Yeah. So the twins had twins. So now Nelson has 4 children to deal with, and he basically goes like, "I'm gonna go out for a pack of smokes." And then the twins, the moms, are like, "Isn't that what your dad told you?" Yeah, I never got it until now.
I'm coming, Papa.
Yeah, which I thought was pretty funny. And then we get stupid Milhouse crying in the corner.
Yeah, we get more of, and this whole is a gag of him being this hulked up, just steroided out character, and there's more of that Milhouse stick there where he's like blasting his lats in the as he waits for the decompression chamber, things like that. But we go on, and what we see is that Bart is feeling super guilty at this point. He's taken the scholarship. Lisa can't go to Yale, and Jinda is trying to get in his pants, and they're walking around, and she's just openly trying to get him to get in bed with her, and he keeps putting her off because he feels guilty. I love
I also
Jada has
love.
a line.
Yep.
She's like, I never had this trouble with Todd Flanders.
Perfect. I was hoping you'd bring that up because that caught my attention too. So Jenda is definitely apparently not a virgin, and Todd Flanders maybe the first lover in the early high
The
school of
bigger
some
they
kind.
are, the harder they fall, by the way,
Right. I also so randomly they come across Frank's house, and so of course they go in, much to Jenda's discretion or being upset,
Yep. And look in the
and
future again. So now we're in the future of the future.
right. But when they're panning across old Frank's house, there's a very dark visual gag of a skeleton that looks exactly like Frank with the little jacket and the name tag, and there's a rope around its neck. This dude hung himself. Dr. Frank hung himself in
Oh,
this future. And so
oh,
then you kind of have a bit that kind of reminds me of Spaceballs when they're doing like, oh, what part of the movie are we? And it's like, they keep blowing it up. So they go to the future and they see that just, Lisa ends up marrying Milhouse. They're totally miserable.
oh,
And what does
miserable.
Milhouse sell to pay for the power bill?
Lisa's like, I want to go to community college. He's like, forget it. I sold all of my marrow to pay the light bill.
And then the lights immediately go out and he's like, I didn't have a lot of marrow.
I guess I didn't have a lot of marrow. Oh, poor Milhouse. He's destined to be a loser, and they're miserable. And this is a big part of this because Bart's watching this, and his heart is breaking for Lisa because he stole her future. And this is where, Jenda's like, hey, buddy, you need to pay attention to me. And he's like, I got to save my sister. And so Jenda's like, well, if you do that, we're broken up. And Bart's like, no, I've got to save Lisa.
She's going to go to Rod Flanders and just make it a complete circle.
Exactly.
Yeah, so Bart...
or maybe the dad, isn't he hung?
Yeah,
But,
so Bart's coming to the rescue in Dad's car for some reason. He goes, I guess, back to the house with the... it's a
they
very
all live
weird
on the
cut.
same street, something?
I don't know. The underwater house
there was a
is
scene they cut
down
out,
the
Josh,
street
I
of
wonder.
Evergreen Terrace. Anyway, it doesn't matter because that's what you need for the plot. Once again, stuff doesn't have to necessarily make logical sense,
Right,
because
so-
as long as it's moving the story along and as long as it's funny, let's go.
It's exactly it. So Lisa and Milhouse are out at contraception lookout again. And Lisa's like, maybe I do have a future. And Milhouse is like, no, you're screwed. Your only hope is to clutch at straws that love you. And Lisa's like, I guess this is my destiny. And Bart busts through the trees in the car and grabs Lisa and pulls her into the car and saves her from Milhouse.
Yeah, and then Milhouse gives chase, and then he gets stuck in a tree, and we have a weird Lenny and Carl bit where they're either being jerks, they're ghosts, or they're trees. Because they refuse to help him, and they're like, "Oh, we can't help you because we're ghosts."
Because he's all hooked up, he runs between two trees, and he's like hoisted off the ground, and he can't move at all.
Yeah,
and they're
stuck.
just making fun of him in this tree.
Yeah, and I kind of like it too because I think they're just jerks. Out of the three, ghost, trees, or jerks, I'm going with jerks every time.
Lenny, Carl, can you pull me out?
Sorry, we're ghosts now.
Our spirits live in those two trees.
Or maybe we're alive and we just feel like jerking you around.
Or maybe we're one of each.
Jerks, but kind of just like, just amusing themselves,
Yeah.
We love Lenny and Carl.
So
Bart, then we have the sweet moment there with Bart saying, Lisa, I'm not going to take the scholarship. You should have the scholarship and go to Yale. And it's a very sweet moment. I love these sweet moments, family moments in these shows. And she says, Bart, that is so noble. And that's it. And it ends with Bart, sacrificing his future, which we find out from Frank earlier is like, you'll be happy just before you die.
Yeah, he goes, you'll find the true love of your life at 83 and die a year later.
And then Bart, and then Bart, 1 minute later.
Yeah, and then Bart goes and puts my brain into a pauper's grave. Like Frank says it so quickly. It is one of those lightning fast jokes that if you don't really think about it, you might miss it.
And my brain is put in a pauper's grave.
A pauper's grave, of course, being with the if you don't have anybody to bury you, they bury you
Yeah.
very cheaply in a landfill somewhere.
Right. I mean, you're kind of like that poor dog that Christy Gnome shot. You're just in that gravel pit with everybody
That's
else.
it.
And then the episode ends too with a kind of callback because they show like Marge and Homer reconciling, right?
Yeah.
So I still am angry that they were separated, but at least at the end they show them getting back together and Homer's
do.
underwater house, and I
In
love
the underwater house.
the animation of this. Like they have like very pretty like lights and luminescence coming from like the jellyfish and whatnot, and then it ends with our final shot on a three-eyed whale, which is a call to the three-eyed fish Blinky as well. So I thought that was kind of cute to see the three-eyed whale, even though it was like a little disturbing, to be honest, with the
a giant blue whale with 3 eyes.
Yeah, and it's not like whale eyes. It's like the cartoon eyeballs, that the Simpsons do. It's like the same eyeballs that the humans would have. So it kind of looks a little. It's funny, but it's kind of like a little disturbing.
Homage to the three-eyed fish.
And then once again, you have an episode here. We have some post-credit action, right?
We have post-credit action. I love it. You want to do it? You want me to do it?
You can go for it.
All right. So we get Vice President Cletus. Bart's like, I don't want to watch this anymore. He switches to Vice President Cletus. Over the credits, he's on the phone in his state capacity. He says, "You want me to attend the funeral of the Sultan of Brunei? Well, it would be my honor. Brandine, pack my evening breeches. We're going to Brunei."
And that's a very common type of joke for Cletus. There's another one where he's like, "Hey, I could see my mom's house from up here. Hey, Ma, get off the darn roof." So it's a very common thing where like he's just like kind of quiet, and then like he just shouts something to like somebody off camera.
It's fantastic gag.
So I have some final thoughts for this episode. I thought it was fun visual gags and future bits. However, I didn't enjoy this episode as much as the others we have watched so far. A lot of the jokes kind of fell flat. I know it's rubber band reality and everything will reset, but it really is hard for me to wrap my brain around like high school age Lisa and Bart. Also the divorce thing between Homer and Marge. So this could be my own personal hangups. And I also wish they did something more with Bender instead of just having like a quick cameo. I would have liked him to be like popping up at the end or something like that, like in the water. And trying to get Homer, like get revenge on Homer for being called a loser and thrown out the car or something like that. But you know what? I'm not working on The Simpsons. I'm not king of the world. So, tough titties.
No, and I agree with you, Josh. I felt like this was, the episode, it really didn't feel like it was cohesive writing. And I agree with you. There are things that could have played better. And it's just not as tight as what we've seen. And it really is, there's a sort of a plot, but it really is just about gags in this one.
Yeah.
Now, I very much enjoyed it. I hadn't seen it. I kind of picked it out of a hat. I've seen it before a long time ago. And
Same here.
Very much enjoyed watching it the first go through, but comparing it to some of the classics, this is not, I don't think, on our list of classics.
Yeah, I mean, there's some episodes where stuff just kind of happens.
And please let us know, any listeners, if this is on, high up on your list. This one in particular, it was fun to go through.
Awesome. Well, great job, Robin. And before we dive into the next episode, let's take a brief commercial break.
Listeners, we got a special treat today. Our newest sponsor is the Android's Dungeon and Baseball Card Shop. I am joined now by the owner, Comic Book Guy.
You know I have a name, Robin.
Oh yeah, who the fuck cares?
So, I also find it highly illogical that a podcast with 3 listeners that's not based in Springfield will be a benefit to my business.
Look, Jeff, if that's your real name, you agreed to sponsor our show today if we sent you a wheelbarrow full of Krusty Burgers. So let's cut back on the snark.
Such an attempt may prove futile, but I shall try. A deal is a deal, after all. Folks, come on by the shop on Free Comic Book Day to get the following titles. Radioactive Man 908, Enter the Chosen One. Lois Lane number 505. Aquaman Gets Married again.
Great titles, Jeff. And what podcast will you be playing that day non-stop?
No, don't make me say it. Don't make me play it.
See the line, Jeff.
We'll be playing Sacrilicious with Robin and Snerts.
Why, thank you, Jeff. You heard it here first, folks. Check out the Android's Dungeon and Baseball Card Shop on Free Comic Book Day.
Worst fake ad ever.
All right, cut this guy.
And now, back to our show. Well, thank you to our sponsors at the Android's Dungeons and Baseball Card Shop. I don't know, man, if that wheelbarrow of Krusty Burgers was worth that shitty endorsement, but, you know, I guess we live and learn.
That guy really gets on my nerves, Josh, I gotta tell you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be ordering my comics through Amazon. Suck it, local business. So my pick for this episode is definitely more of a classic than yours, and I'm not saying that saying shame, you didn't pick a classic. I'm
Josh,
just pointing out the facts.
Leaving now. I'm off the podcast. Forever.
And there he goes, folks, never to return. Bye-bye. So I have another classic Simpsons episode at season 2, episode 21, 3 Men and a Comic Book. This was directed by Wes Archer, written by Jeff Martin. And the first air date was 5/9/1991. So much like the last episode, I was 9. I don't necessarily remember seeing this episode when it came out, but my family got a second TV. And that was like the biggest deal in the world for us Stern siblings here. And we were able to go watch TV, and we would have on rotation. It would be like Home Improvement, one Simpsons episode. Then it would go over to Rugrats and Doug, and we'd go back to The Simpsons for the second episode. So I definitely remember seeing this as a kid, but I'm not sure if I saw it on the first air date. How about you, Robin? Do you remember seeing this when it dropped?
Yes, I did. So I would have been 14 and a freshman in high school, and it was a big deal. So this is episode, season 2,
Correct.
91, really early episode.
Yep.
But it was already a phenomenon culturally, The Simpsons, and we had teachers talking about it in school. It was often discussed in school, and this was something that I remembered watching so many years ago. I don't think I've seen it that much since, though.
Nice.
It was fun to watch.
So yeah, this is a great episode. I don't even remember the chalk gag and couch gag. I didn't really care. So we have Marge driving Bart and Lisa to a comic convention, and man, these kids are excited. So have you ever been to a comic convention, Robin?
Oh, I have. I loved it. I was skeptical because you had to pay for them. I'm like, what the hell am I paying to go buy comics? And I went to Comic-Con in San Diego, and I had the most amazing time.
I should really get my stuff together and figure out to go to con, even one that's local in Los Angeles, because I really love animation and voiceovers. And I know you kind of mostly standing in line, but if you can get, a few minutes with Jim Cummings or Rob Paulson or, Cree Summer, that would be kind of cool. So maybe one day I'll get out there, but
Josh, we're media now.
Yeah, I got to go out there and sell Sacrilicious with Robin and Snerts.
With the way what was so fun is they have these panels. That's what's fun at Comic-Con.
Right. Yeah. But see, I can see those panels on YouTube sometimes too. I guess it's a little different if you're there. You might not see everything from the YouTube clips, but yeah.
First time I went, the 2 big panels were just 2 shows that are just unbelievably important to me, which is Avatar, the Nickelodeon show, and Doctor Who. And you're in a room with 10,000 people who nerd out just as hard on this thing you learn about.
I can understand that, because that's how
amazing experience.
That's how I felt with The Simpsons at the Hollywood Bowl and watching the opening night of the Simpsons movie. You're kind of just with your people, and everybody has something to talk about because they all share the same passion. Well, right on.
I love it.
So we get some fun comic book jokes here because Bart is making fun of Lisa, who says she wants to get, see what kind of deals she can get for Casper the Friendly Ghost. So of course Bart calls him Casper the Wimpy Ghost and brings up a classic joke that I use all the time. I think Casper is the ghost of Richie Rich. And they animated them just the same. So it's pretty hilarious. And it looks very obvious that Richie Rich kicked the bucket and became Casper the Friendly Ghost. So my only question to you is, how did Richie Rich die?
His coins fell on him. Kind
His
of.
coins, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Same
unlike
way.
Scrooge McDuck, he did not have
Yeah.
the toon
Same
force
way Scrooge
necessary to
McDuck went.
survive the
God bless
avalanche
them
of
both.
coins. Yeah, well, rest in power, Richie Casper.
That's it.
And then Lisa says, perhaps he realized how the hollow pursuit of money is and took his own life. So Lisa went way darker than you did, Robin, which I thought was hilarious. And then, of course, Bart points out that Radioactive Man is the pinnacle of comic books and has the best one-liners whenever he punches somebody. So he goes, gives him an example of that. And Lisa actually laughs and says, you know what? I stand corrected, which
I
I
love that
love.
line.
I love the fact that they're not just going to keep button heads, but if they actually genuinely like something that the other person is doing, they will like acquiesce and compliment, which is great.
I love
There's
it. I do.
Now we're waiting in line. The Marge just drops off the kids. I can relate to this too. My mom would do this all the time. She's like, all right, you little monsters, go walk around the mall for a while.
Like, I don't want to go in there. I'm going to go to Chili's and get
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go hang out for a bit. I'm going to go get my nails done, whatever. And so they're waiting in line, and there's a sign that says you get a discount on the entrance if you're wearing a costume. So this is when we get the first introduction of one of my favorite alter egos of Bart, Bartman.
Bartman.
What do you think of Bartman, Robin?
Is this really the first time we see
Yes.
Bartman?
Yes.
If anybody who doesn't know, Bartman became this huge phenomenon. As I was saying, in my school, we talked about it all the time, teachers and students, The Simpsons, and Bartman was one of the biggest, things that came out. There was a song that was
but I think the Bartman, Do the Bartman is a little different than Bartman the comic, because this is more based off an '89 Batman with Michael Keaton, and where Bartman is a Michael Jackson parody. Because it's like Do the Bartman, it's very much like a pop song from that era. And totally. So I also liked when I was growing up, my parents would get me a calendar of Simpsons portraits that weren't necessarily tied to the show, but were still Simpsons. And one of the best ones was a homage to the '89 Batman, where they're up in the clock tower and Krusty is playing Joker and Bartman is playing Batman, and Batman has him by the collar and he's like, "Arr." So there's some fun art around Bartman in general. But the guy at the front is like, no dice, full price, kid. And Bart did something that really pisses me off. I used to work retail, did my fair share of cashiering back in the day, and I always hate it when people would throw wadded up money onto the counter and expect you to count it. And I'm like, that's so rude, and it really bugged me. But Bart is a kid, and he's a miscreant, as you like to say. So miscreant. Fine, okay. But you're not getting that discount. And of course, we get Quimby. So we don't have too much Quimby in our experience so far with Sacrilicious. But so I think this is like our first kind of real exposure to him, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we have seen him maybe once somewhere.
So he's kind of fun, and he's giving a speech thanking the children. He's like, he says something along the lines of like, "Oh, you put $300 into our economy, good for you, kids." And he tries to relate to him, and he's like, this is something along the lines like Radiation Man, and of course Jimbo shouts back, "That's Radioactive Man, jerk." I stand corrected. And then what I love is when he's done with his speech, Quimby goes up to the bodyguard. He's like, "Get that punk's name. No one makes a fool of Diamond Joe Quimby."
Joe Quimby. It's great. It's the old Joe Kennedy, like gangster.
Yep. Yeah. Now Quimby is definitely based off of the Kennedys. He has that, shout-out in another episode.
I wonder how early this is, Josh, because they're clearly still establishing his character here, and it's great. It's a great Quimby scene there.
I think Quimby might become maybe not like top tier S tier for us, but I definitely think he's hovering around the A tier as a side character.
I think you're right, Josh.
Yeah. So Martin is looking for his left Vulcan ear, which is kind of hilarious. And so he goes to Lost and Found, and they're just kind of like lightsaber, tricorder, blah, 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 blah. And Otto is waiting in line with his art. And Bart like they have a very cool effect where Bart swoops in like a superhero.
Yes.
If you actually played the Simpsons arcade game, this is the same kind of animation. When you died and come back to life, you would kind of swoop in and land, and they had a very
The
fun sound
sound
effect.
effect is great there. It just
Yeah,
triggering.
yeah. And so Otto has a comic idea, Busman. He's a bus driver by
Busman.
day, but by night fights vampires in a post-apocalyptic war zone.
He's
So
super
would you read
into it.
Busman? Would you read Busman? Is that your cup of tea?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yes. Let's say yes.
Okay.
There's no consequences here.
So now we jump to Bart, Martin, Milhouse leaving Otto to hopefully get his comic book greenlit, right? And we go to see the old actor from the television show. So we have
Buddy
a 50s
Hodges.
style Radioactive Man show that's very reminiscent to me of the Superman show
Superman
of
in
the
50s.
old eras.
Yep.
You know, and we have an old black and white, and of course, Radioactive Man is smoking a cigarette and praising the good product of Larmy.
Laramie cigarettes.
Yeah, and then
That's
so Fall Out Boy is like,
Man smokes when he kills the bad guy.
and Fall Out Boy wants a smoke, and Radioactive Man replies, "Not until you're 16." Yes.
Well, but this is where we're introduced to Fall Out Boy, which becomes bigger later, and that became a huge thing, of course. Fall Out Boy, got to be one of the great characters in this whole show.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, and I love the very cheap effects of everything. So like it cuts to a globe on a string and is about to be hit by a rocket, and then you get the announcers like, "Will the hero be able to save Earth in time? Turn in next time." Blah 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 blah. Same radioactive time, same radioactive channel. And we find out that the actor who played Radioactive Man was Dirk Richter, and his sidekick Fall Out Boy was played by Buddy Hodge. What did you think of Buddy?
Oh, he's great. I love they start peppering with questions like a Star Trek convention. And this is like an effete, like New York actor in his, early 50s with a cravat and, like a beret on. And they're like,
well, it's kind of like a John Waters haircut, very slick and parted,
very John
right?
Waters.
And has he's smoking a cigarette, which is hilarious because 91 people were still smoking a lot in public. It wasn't like it is
actors,
today.
Believe me.
Yeah, and so he kind of comes up with this very dainty, affair, and of course they ask him a very. Milhouse talks about like, well, how come when Radioactive Man was hit with like the shrinking syringe, his clothes shrank too? And the actor is like, I don't care, but he wants to tout.
I love. He goes. I guarantee you, I don't know.
Yeah, and then what does he praise himself? He advertises his own work.
It's like, oh, but I did just finish playing Rum Tum Tugger in Cats off Broadway. Did any of you see it?
And of course not. So then Bart, motherfucking Bart, man, comes up and asks a very, very dark question. And it was prefaced at the beginning of this interview, that you shouldn't ask questions about the death of Dirk Richter. And we find out that this guy got shot up in a bordello. And Bart asks if his ghost is still haunting said bordello. And of course, this upsets Buddy. And he just kind of, in a very whimpering, he's like, "Dr. Dirk Richter was a beautiful man. Can't you little vultures leave him alone?" Which is fantastic. And of course, then we cut to our comic book guy who has his Androids Dungeon and Baseball Card Shop booth. And the kids are kind of going through stuff, blah, 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 blah. And he pulls out Radioactive Man #1, the crux of our episode. And because he's impressed with Bartman's costume and he kind of is reminded of his own youth, he says, "I'll give it to you for $100. Of course, so that's the goal now. Our goal is for Bart to get Radioactive Man #1.
#1.
So we're done with the.
He says something like, "I now know my life's mission."
Yeah, I forgot about that. Good call out, man. That's good. We're done with the convention. Homer and Marge pick up the kids, and Lisa got a lot of Casper and Lois Lane comics for $1. Like she's stacked,
for $1,
man.
She got a stack for $1.
Yeah,
because they're the crappiest comics ever made.
Right. And then Homer makes a comment. He's like, "I never understood what Superman saw in Lois. It's all about the Wonder Woman."
He starts doing his. We had this another episode where he's like,
Yeah. And he gives the lines like, "She can tie me up anytime." You do
with that lariat.
you do the role better than I do. What's that like? The uh, yeah, most excellent. So Homer is feeling generous. He's like, "Hey, everybody, let's go to Krusty Burger." And Bart immediately pounces on it. It's like, "Well, hey, well, if you're feeling so generous, how about giving me $100 to buy a comic book?" And so Homer,
$100.
right? Homer obviously rejects it, and they're eating there at Krusty, and it's like, "Can I get $100? Can I get $100?" And this is a trick that the kids often use to get Homer to do what they want. But Homer actually has a moment of genius, and he pulls out some reverse psychology, and he repeatedly asks, "Are you going to stop bugging me? Are you? Are you? Are you? Are you?" And then Bart's like, "Fine, oh, I win."
Fine.
And Marge has a very realistic idea of Bart doing some odd jobs around the neighborhood. And she gives a really nice story about her asking Patty and Selma for money. They say yes, but they got to be their slave for X amount of time. And so she says, "For months and months, I worked and worked while my sisters smoked and smoked." And then that's the origin story of Patty and Selma's gravelly voice, is that they just started smoking cigarettes while Marge was doing all the chores.
She was saving money for like an easy bake oven.
Yeah, absolutely. And so and of course, like, she's telling this like really heartfelt story that any kid should listen and learn from their parents. And Bart, it just goes way over his head.
He has a great thing where Bart says, "So maybe a part-time job would be the answer." And he goes, "Oh, Mom, I couldn't ask you to do that."
Yeah, you're like, "Already do enough around the house, Ma." and of course, Lisa is just like,
"Stupid."
Right. And then we cut to a Boys Meet World parody where all of a sudden, like, he starts having an internal monologue as music is playing over that's the same from the show. And then as he keeps pulling out, and he's like, "Oh, should I get a job?" And what's that?
Wonder Years callback.
Oh, that was Wonder Years. Oh, thank you
I
for
think
the
it was a
correction.
Wonder Years
Okay.
callback. I never watched.
Oh, my bad.
One, so
I don't know Boys Meet World or Wonder Years, so sorry for that. But yeah,
I don't
good
know
correction.
Either, so
yeah,
we're both wrong. Let's agree to both be wrong.
I mean, it'll be like that hydrofoil all over again.
Spoiler alert: hydrofoil is not a hovercraft.
Not at all.
I know this now, Josh.
Well, our educational journey is never ending and has many winding paths.
I hope so.
Get a job? Were they serious? I didn't realize it at the time, but a little piece of my childhood had slipped away. Forever.
Bart, what are you staring at?
Nothing.
He didn't say it, and neither did I, but at that moment, my dad and I were closer than we'd ever...
Stop it!
Sorry.
So now, what I like about this, though, is Homer is kind of freaked out about Bart just staring off. He's like, "What are you staring at? Cut it out, boy." So that interrupts the monologue, but then it starts back up again, and then Homer yells at Bart again. So it's a fun little 1-2 punch there.
Cut it out.
Yeah, so now we cut back to the house, and another day, right? Another day. And Bart is looking through the couch cushions while singing, "I need some money.
Trying to make some money.
I need some money." And he finds an old piece of gum and eats it, which is just fucking gross. It really is nasty.
There's so many references to that. That's an elf, too. I'm like, that's so gross.
Yeah, I don't throw away gum and be done with it. So he's looking for money. He's trying to recycle, and he sees like a half-empty bottle of cola, so he just dumps it into the sink, takes the bottle over to Apu for a dime. So he's not really doing very good. He has like a penny from the couch, and he has a dime from Apu with his recycling. And so then he smashes a frame with some coins and takes them to be exchanged, and they're only worth 3 cents. Lisa,
like Bolivian souvenir coins.
Yeah, they were trash. It was not worth anything. And so he's trying now to sell lemonade, which is a classic way for kids to make money. And has a very nice sign that's well, written correctly. And Lisa comes up, it's like, "No, you got to play on your sympathies more." And he like turns some letters around, like turns his hat around so he looks more sad and pathetic.
Like pathetic, yeah.
And he comes up with a very good idea, because no one's buying lemonade, but you know what people like? They like beer.
And what do we have? What does Homer always have in the house? Lots of beer.
Yeah, so he ends up taking Homer's stash of beer and starts selling it for a nickel. and it immediately attracts all sorts of people. We have the two barflies
Bustling.
and Barney already there. Like, I guess Moe's was closed, so they decided to go for the nickel beer. And people are like just kind of hanging out around the table. And Lou and Ed come up, who are the two cops, and bust him. And he was, and Bart, of course, being as sharp as he is, he's like, "Hey, you guys look kind of thirsty. Can I interest you in a free beer?" And of course, the cops are like, "Well, it's just your first offense. I guess we can let you off with a
I guess
warning."
we could have one.
Yeah.
Bart's a
So,
miscreant, you know?
would you buy nickel beer from a child on the side of the road?
Hell yeah. That's a nickel for a beer?
uh,
Hell yeah.
I
I'd buy all of it.
I would wonder if it's really beer.
He's watering it down, watery beer.
Yeah,
And look, if it's Coors anyway, you can't tell the difference.
That's very true. So Homer comes home and is very upset, and he's just kind of like sobbing and with his on his knees, "Look, my beer, my precious beer," which is hilarious. I thought actually he was going to turn to anger, and he does not. So good for Homer. He's just kind of sad. Maybe anger comes later. First you cry, and then you punch.
The faces of acceptance.
And then we go over to Marge, who's at the salon and mentioning Bart's desire to make money. And we're introduced to a pivotal character for this episode, Mrs. Glick, who offers to pay Bart for a few chores around the house. What are your thoughts on Mrs. Glick, Robin?
Oh, she's the worst. She is just one of these old, biddies that is not nice, and it's got the screechy voice, and let me pinch your cheek, and,
kind of reminds me of Skinner's mom, but like more decrepit and 1930s feeling. So Mrs. Glick,
arsenic and old lace kind of a thing.
It Bart comes over to Mrs. Glick's house, and they offer some really nasty things like almond paste and sauerkraut candy. The sauerkraut candy makes me laugh too, because if she was actually in World War I don't think they would call it sauerkraut candy. They'd probably call it Liberty candy. Because folks who don't know, they called during World War I, sauerkraut was renamed to Liberty lettuce. It's because there was a anti-German thing going around because Germany was being a little active in the European field, to say it mildly. So I did pick that up, but I also was wondering, like, well, you history major, like Robin, you said you didn't know that.
I had no idea.
So maybe it was smart that they did the sauerkraut candy, because that is a funny concept and it's a funny word. So good job with the writers there. And she tells a story about her husband, Mr. Glick, dying in World War II or One, and because he held a grenade for too long, which I just love, because it's like, I'm doing this for Jimmy and Timmy and the guy down the street, and that other person who's, and of course he blows up. And the next,
and it's violent too, like his shoe, like his leg comes half burnt over there.
Oh yeah. And so, now we get a segment where throughout the next couple parts of the episode where Bart is doing various chores.
And they're brutal.
They are hard. It's hard labor. He's doing hard labor. Did you ever volunteer or try to get money from like the neighbors while doing odd jobs around the house or their house or their neighborhood?
I would cop out after like 5 minutes. I was a lazy kid. I'd be like, it's hot. I'm gonna go watch TV. I don't really need money.
One thing comes to mind when I was living in Chatsworth. We had a neighbor up the hill, and it's like, oh, I need to do some weeding. Josh will pay you like $10 an hour, which was a lot of money for me at the time, to go weed. And I go to the property and I look at it, and this is a massive property, and it, like, the weeds go up the hill and shit like that, way the far back. And I was just like, okay, I'll do my best. After 6 hours, I was done, and I apologized and I said thank you, and they still gave me the money, which was nice. But yeah, I remember those hard labors, and I have to say, like, my dad was a pretty nice guy and wouldn't make me do like some of the really crappy stuff. He would just do it himself. Now, I don't know if that's because he wants it done right or he didn't want to be that overbearing father. But thank you, Dad, for not making me do hard labor like Bart is having to do for Mrs. Glick.
The one time in my life that happened was my dad, we were digging up a chunk of the backyard, and in Georgia we have Georgia clay, red clay.
Yeah.
And this backyard was full of dense clay. And my dad was going to pay me like $10 an hour for this. And I got out there and I was shoveling for about 30 minutes. I was like, nope. My dad was like, you gave up too easy. And of course, he ended up hiring a backhoe because it was such a pain in the ass.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
lasted 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I was out there. I was dripping sweat. I'm like, nah, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, so first up, much like me, we have cleaning weeds in the yard. I love the animation of a dense jungle with a little cute lizard that's there chilling on a vine. Glick says, "You do know which ones are the weeds. All of them? Good boy."
That's a good boy.
And of course, much like your father, he did not have the right tools for the job, and he has a pair of gardening scissors that are rusted shut. So he tries to open them and can't. So he just starts picking, and then he's just bloodied. He comes back in bloodied, and Mrs. Glicks is like, "I'll get the iodine." And this is a running joke that we have where he continues to do a hard chore, comes back, gets the iodine on him, and he just starts screaming because if you guys don't know, putting iodine on an open wound is very, very painful.
Very painful.
So that's a the iodine thing is a lot of fun. There's some good things here and there, but the same kind of pattern continues. Bart does a terrible job, or not a terrible job, a terribly hard labor job, comes back all kind of bloodied, and then
more iodine.
yeah, and then the iodine comes back. The last time I think we see that is when he's cleaning the cat litter, the cat attacks. And then they have a scene that's almost straight out of a horror film where you see the shadow of Mrs. Glick and Bart. And he's like, "No, not the iodine. Anything but the iodine. Amputate the limb. I don't care." Yeah. And it very much reminded me of a Hitchcock film.
Yes.
Just because of the way it was shot with the big shadows and everything. Very well
So we
done.
had fun with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's finally payday. And how much does Mrs. Glick give Bart?
She goes, "Here's your pay. It's 2 quarters. Now go and spend it on penny whistles and moon pies."
Well, it's payday. I'll wager you've been looking forward to this. Oh, yes, ma'am. Here we are. 2 quarters. 2 quarters. You deserve every penny.
Yeah, 2 quarters. So Bart is so pissed. And he's like, "I'm not going to, say thank you." And of course he says, Mrs. Glick is on fire for this one. She's like, "You're welcome."
Well, I'm not going to say thank you. You're welcome.
But there is no way that I am saying thank you. You're welcome. All right, then off you go to spend it on penny whistles and moon pie.
Yeah, I thought that was great. And so Bart is venting to Homer about how hard it was to make money, and he concludes, "Work is for chumps," which Homer is all of a sudden, "I'm so proud of you, boy. I was twice your age before I figured that out." So Bart is very, like all of a sudden he's like, oh, my dad loves me because I figured something out. Like, that's very interesting. And of course, sending the complete wrong message of how to work hard. And I love how it took Bart.
Homer.
If Bart is 10, that means Homer didn't figure out that work is for chumps until he was 20.
Yep.
So we cut to the comic shop, and Martin is trying to buy Radioactive Man #1, the coveted prize, the Precious, for $40. And then Bart shows up, and he says, "I'll give it to."
Doing the same thing Bart has is trying to like make it.
Oh yeah, what does he do?
I fished a dime out of the sewer, for God's sake.
Yeah, he's very dramatic too about it. He's very over the top. And so comic book guy is really getting. He's like, "These freaking kids," and so Milhouse comes in and he's like, "Oh, I want to buy the baseball card with some guy with the sideburns on it for $30."
It's Carl Yastrzemski with the mutton chops.
Yeah,
everybody knows the Carl Yastrzemski card with the mutton chops.
Yeah, I also love how comic book guy mentions that he has a master's in folklore and mythology, which seems to fit.
Kids.
I mean, that really.
I would agree.
Yeah, I think that is a very apt major for comic book guy to have.
Folklore and mythology.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was either this or he's going to be a librarian.
So Bart and the kids realize that if they pull their money together, that they can buy the coveted comic book. And so Bart gives a little sass to comic book guy. He's like, "Why don't you just waddle over there and get it?" And comic book guy is like, "Yes, sir," because he sees the cash. As soon as he sees the cash, comic book guy is willing to play.
Bart is not nice to people that he's like commanding.
No, he's throwing wads of money at people. He's commanding adults around. It's not good. So of course they are trying to go home, and they have a really nice animated spot where they're all going in 3 different directions while holding the comic book. but then they all tug and they
Mm-hmm.
kind of realize like, oh, and the comic book guy comes out, he's like, got more than you're bugging for. With a lightning bolt
Maniacal
that
laugh.
strikes, which is kind of fun. So they're not really sure how they're going to share their precious, so they
This
decide to go
is
back to Bart's treehouse, and they open up the comic book and they all take a smell of it. And so, do you like the smell of comic books, Robin?
oh yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me like when you would go into like a trading card store and it had that
Mm-hmm.
like general aroma of just kind of paper
Mm-hmm.
products and cardboard and stuff to that
Mm-hmm.
nature, which is really funny. And then Millhouse has a great line with "It smells like my grandpa,"
It feels
uh,
like
and I
I
don't
think
think
Martin
my
says,
comic
"This
books,
is the stuff dreams are made of."
yeah, they're all kind of loving it, but I don't want my comic book smelling like my grandpa. So I don't know if
It
that's like
smells
the
old because this is the first edition of the first comic, so it's old.
so does it smell like the era or does it smell like his
He's kind
his
of
bo?
mildewy. His grandfather's a little mildewy.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I also have another question too. This is our first episode that we're discussing where we get Bart's treehouse being a focal point of part of the episode.
Oh, it's
Did you
great.
have a
It's a
treehouse
great
growing up?
character in the episode.
Do you have a
I did
treehouse?
not. I
No.
did not, but I loved them, Josh. I
Yeah.
loved treehouses. I loved climbing when I was a kid. I still love climbing over things. I just can't do it much anymore. But yes, 100%. I loved that stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I don't remember anybody. I grew up mostly in apartments, and it wasn't until high school where my parents were able to get a house. So we didn't have tree houses, but we definitely were climbing around the apartment building on various stairwells, getting into stuff we shouldn't be getting into, and all that kind of fun stuff.
Well,
But
in other places other than Los Angeles, which we've both lived in, you grew up there, and I spent a lot of time there. They don't have trees that you can really climb and put stuff in. It's not the same as in where I'm from, Atlanta, where we have these giant trees with all these limbs that you can build into. And
right.
but yeah, you missed out, dude.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I mean it's okay. I also don't like heights, so maybe I wouldn't really feel too
I
comfortable
don't
up in a
either.
tree.
These are a
Uh,
little lower than that. This is when you could still fall and you just bounce.
yeah, yeah. Well, now we cut to a dramatic reading of Radioactive Man #1, which I love because they have that very. This might be Phil Hartman doing the voice, but it's that very like, hey, cut, breathe, powers, changing my insides, or something to that nature. And I really do
Uh-huh.
like the voiceover because it's a very stereotypical, leading like, look out behind you, Radioactive Man, like
Mm-hmm.
that kind of deal. And so we get to see the origin story of Radioactive Man, which is basically him surviving an atomic bomb
He
blast.
gets hit by a bomb, yeah.
Right. And
Napalm.
so, you might think that's ridiculous, but if you actually look into the origin stories of many of our classic heroes, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them getting hit with radiation or
The
a
Hulk.
bomb or explosion of some kind where like chemicals alter their body. So this is very much in line with other origin
Josh,
stories.
do you know what waves an A-bomb would produce?
Gamma?
Gamma rays.
Yeah.
That's where it came from.
Yep. And gamma rays is like one of the things that Stan Lee really likes to use in Marvel characters, like the Fantastic Four, Hulk, gamma rays for days, baby.
Mm-hmm.
So Martin comes up with a way for us, or not us, not us, yeah, Robin, for us to share the
Yes.
comic book.
Thank God.
Martin proposes that they rotate the comic being in each other's homes for 2 days a week, and on Sundays there'll be a rotation based off of a random number generator. And if for whatever reason 0 comes up, they're going to do rock, paper, scissors, best 3
It's a
out of
very
5.
elaborate system. Martin has
Yeah.
worked very hard to come up with a fair system for them.
And it actually seems like it would work if they had the bandwidth to be patient and know how to share. And that is one of the messages we have for this episode is how do you share? Is sharing good? Can you make sharing work?
This scene is where we start to see the boys start to like covet this, we talked about this like the MacGuffin. This is like a pot of gold. Their eyes are big and their mouths watering at this amazing thing, and they're starting to like snap at each other over it and get
as
mistrustful
we're
of each
talking,
other.
I didn't think about this when I was writing in my notes, but it's very much like the One Ring and Gollum. It's like we have 3 Golems
You
trying to share
mentioned the
one ring.
Precious earlier. It's exactly what it's like.
Yeah, my precious. So the paranoia starts to grow, and Martin starts to walk away. He's like, well, it's Wednesday or whatever, which is my day, so I'm going to take the comic book. And Bart stops him. He's like, wait a minute.
Wait
That's just what you wanted, didn't you, Martin? So none of the kids can agree on who's going to be taking the comic book home. So they decide to do a sleepover.
And they're with one eye open, like looking at each other suspiciously.
Very much so. And they are not right before they go to sleep, too. They're just kind of standing around the comic or sitting around the comic and all staring and glaring at each other. Milhouse goes, I want to read it again. And Martin Bart says, no, your oils will ruin our precious. So, you know, they really want to maintain. They're not like the younger kids that would kind of just destroy stuff. You know, they're at an age where they want to keep things nice because they know it's a very coveted comic and it's very precious.
It's just the greatest thing of all time. It's so precious.
Yeah.
I love what Bart goes. He goes, we want to be able to enjoy it. We want to have the last person who dies enjoy it. And of course, Bart's like, what do you mean when we die?
So the boys start to get into a scrap, but before it gets too crazy, Marge shows up with microwave s'mores, which sounds disgusting. I'm sorry.
They're literally strangling each other.
Yeah. And I love how Marge is just like, oh, boys will be boys type of thing. She just like, here's your snacks. And I love it because they have this really great 360 camera shot of the boys eating the s'mores as the storm is intensifying, and it just kind of keeps rotating and showing all their faces. The animation towards the end of this episode is super detailed and very pretty.
Beautiful. And this is when it was still hand drawn.
Correct. And so they're asleep now after enjoying their snack. The storm is continuing to rage, and Martin tries to get up to go to the bathroom, but Bart threatens him with a slingshot and accuses him of trying to steal the precious.
You know, shines the flashlight on him, got the gun cocked.
Yep.
You know,
and Milhouse wakes up and is immediately on board with Bart. You know, so they tie him up. So now Bart and Milhouse they're arguing on who's going to watch Martin first. So, you know, Milhouse is like, I'll do it. And Bart's like, yeah, that's just what you want. Yeah. So as soon as I'm asleep, and he whacks him, you're going to whack me with the brick. And so another fight breaks out, but this time there's no Marge to interrupt.
It's life and death fighting.
Yeah. Milhouse and Bart are really going at it. And we cut to Homer in the rumpus room. This is something we don't get to see. Did you even know that they had a rumpus room in the Springfield or Simpsons resident?
I had no idea.
Yeah. It's not shown very often, but it is a very classic shot. It's probably a meme or a GIF at this point, where Homer is watching a small television while sitting on a beanbag chair and drinking a beer. And in their room, you see like kids' toys, like a Krusty the Clown punch 'em doll, like, you know, you blow it up and you punch it and it would come back, and a few other cute little toys. So we don't see the rumpus room too many times, but it is part of the house design. And it does come up in later episodes. They're kind of reminding themselves, like, oh shit, we have a rumpus room. Let's use this. Because as we said in the Homer's Enemies, they're living in a palace.
It really is a beautiful house.
So Marge goes to Homer. Homer, are the boys okay? It's really coming down out there. And Homer just looks out the window, and you see a flash of lightning. And you see Bart and Milhouse like going at it, and he's like, they're fine.
They're choking. They're fighting to the death here.
Homer, it's really coming down. Could you check on the boys?
They're fine.
Yeah. And he's just kind of does it. It's very much like when you're at the pool and you want your parents to see, like, I'm going to jump. Look, I'm going to jump. And they kind of look, but not really.
I'm sure they're fine.
And I did like how they used the lighting of the lightning strike to show the fight. Again, very well animated, very pretty stuff.
It's amazing. I love how they kind of juxtaposition there, because the same thing with Marge is like, this is life and death to them. They're literally, about at each other's throats, going to kill each other. And then, they're like, they're fine. Boys will be boys.
Very, very nonchalant. And so, of course, as the storm is intensifying and the brick was taken off the comic that was holding it in place during the wind, so the comic book flutters up and hits the side of the entrance of the treehouse.
Well, and in the fighting...
Yep.
Milhouse has they've rolled over, and Milhouse is now spilled out of the treehouse and is about to plummet to his death.
Yeah, Bart is holding him on his sleeve as the comic book is fluttering against the entrance. And now Bart has to choose. Does he save his friend or does he save the precious?
And Milhouse is pleading for, please, Bart. And Bart's trying to do both.
Yeah. And I love Martin. He goes, I'd like to point out that if I wasn't tied up, I could be grabbing the comic right now. And then Bart goes, shut up, which is something fun. I love when they do that every once in a while, because like they'll just be like, shut up. It's a recurring joke on The Simpsons here. So eventually Bart does the right thing and saves Millhouse. The comic falls to the ground, is chewed up by the dog, and struck with lightning.
And then struck by lightning.
And then we have a solemn bell playing and some like funeral music, basically, which I kind of liked. I thought that was a nice touch.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're all like, crestfallen. And Marge comes up and tells the boys to get inside because of the rainstorm. And not realizing what's going on, she goes, "You can play your little tie-up game inside." So I really like how like Marge just thinks this is innocent, boys will be boys type of play. And so it's morning time, and again, another just well animated shot with the lighting coming up from the east and all that kind of great stuff. We see Homer opening up his car, and I guess he had the windows or they don't seal properly because a big pool of water comes out. And we see the boys next to the car trying to piece back the comic book, but it is no use. This thing is shredded beyond all repair.
And singed.
Yeah, and so they kind of say, we ended up with nothing because the three of us can't share. What's your point? Nothing. Just kind of ticks me off.
They didn't learn a thing.
Yeah, so in classic fashion, Homer and Bart have a real hard time learning life lessons. And the episode ends with a bird working on a nest, and we see the final panel of Radioactive Man #1. And the same view as earlier declares, "The world is safe, but for how long?" The end.
The end.
So my final thoughts on 3 Men in a Comic Book is I like this episode because it was about comic books. I'm sorry. As a kid, I liked this episode because it was about comic books. As an adult, it reminds me of that kid I used to be. I thought the con jokes were great. I thought Mrs. Glick was brutal but funny.
Yep.
I liked the relationship between the boys and how paranoid they got as entering. And like I said, it kind of reminds me of a Hitchcock film. This was a very well shot, well animated show. And I know I've said that now probably 3 or 4 times, folks, but it bears repeating. And I just love this episode. It's another classic. What are your final thoughts?
Classic. I agree. I think that it is an homage to us that grew up in that time, because I had no supervision. This is what children got up to when you don't pay attention to them at all.
So you were a latchkey kid.
Some stuff. Yeah. Not so much the latchkey, but like in the summertime,
Sure.
I would just leave and nobody would know where I was and nobody cared. I could take the bus when I was 8. And
I see.
I got into so much and I loved it.
Yeah,
and they get away with so much when they don't pay attention.
I didn't have that sort of freedom, but my parents, as I got older, the circle around the apartment where we lived kind of got bigger. And once I got a bike, they're like, stay within these 2 miles. You know what I mean? Don't wander off. And the few times that I did wander off is when like dad or mom would come looking for me and they can't find me, and all the hell would break loose. So I didn't quite have that sort of freedom, but my parents definitely had the idea of, okay, is your homework done? Get out. Is the weekend or summer? Get out. Go do something. They just didn't have us like, it's a little bit different when you're growing up in apartments, because your friends are in the apartments or around the neighboring ones. We had a little park when we were living in Canoga Park that we had a little more freedom with that until the drug dealers started showing up.
Well, it's a more industrial area. Atlanta is known for having classic neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But I feel very, very fortunate to have.
But when I was in junior high, I was collecting Marvel comic cards that were very popular at the time. And I would spend my allowance. I would take my bike. I would go to the comic store. I would buy 5 or 6 packs of, Flair, I think it was. So that part is very reminiscent to me. And I do remember sharing video games and stuff and trading video games with friends, and how sometimes that could lead to animosity and anger because they're not giving the game back or they lose it or something of that nature. So I do kind of relate to it on that level. It just wasn't the same because I didn't grow up in a small town like Springfield.
One of my greatest memories, and the MacGuffin like this, was I found a copy of the Nintendo Power magazine.
Oh, nice.
It was the edition talking about the original Zelda. And it was
cool.
Massively helpful. And I was young. And I wish I still had that, Josh. If I still had that, that would be worth so much money now. But it would also be really cool to look at. But
Yeah.
man, I wish that was one of the things that had made it through.
I remember we were in City Walk and I picked up a copy of The Killing Joke because I liked the cover art. And I asked mom and dad if I can get it. And they said, yeah. They had no idea how adult that comic was.
Mm-hmm.
And also, mom, probably listening to the local news, was very sweet and got my sibling and I Death of Superman.
Oh, yeah.
So that was, I remember that being a huge event growing up because they really marketed the hell out of it.
You know,
So.
I never was a huge comic book, nerd back then. For whatever reason, I loved like funnier stuff. Calvin and Hobbes, Garfield.
Mad.
That was kind of my nerd phase, but I also got into like baseball cards were my big thing. That was the
I had a lot of baseball cards growing up too. I still have all my collectibles. I have them in a giant bin. I have a couple sets. It's really weird because I'm not much into sports these days. But if you look at like my childhood, you'll see me always wearing like sports jerseys and collecting all this shit.
It was a game.
Yeah. Speaking of games, Robin, do you hear that sound?
I sure do, Josh.
Well, then you know what time it is. It's the
Crusty
Brand
Seals
of Approval. Yay!
Yay! Woo-hoo!
So, keeping with our game from last time, which I like, this is a great idea, Robin. Thank you for your contribution.
Of course.
What would you give future drama?
So, I think one of the things we hadn't talked about is like, what really do the different numbers mean? I'd say 0's going to be anything that we just are like, that wasn't worth watching. I wonder how many there would be if we get through all 35 years together, Josh. But 1 is like, it was funny. 2 is like, there were some pretty good gags. And that's what I have down for future drama. I'm giving it 2 out of 5. It was fun to watch, but if you dig in, like, there's not the substance of writing that you have in some of the great episodes of The Simpsons.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I, amazing Quinkydink, I also am giving it a 2. And for those very same reasons. So well spoken on that. And for 3 Men in a Comic Book, I like this episode a lot, but much like last week with Camp Krusty, I'm giving it a 4.
I gave it the same. I think that it's an absolute classic, but juvenile in the series.
There you go. All right. Well, you hear it here, folks. Future drama is a 2 Krusty Brand seal of approval, and 3 Men in a Comic Book kicks it up to 4. Yay!
Yay!
And that's a wrap for Sacrilicious with Robin and Snerts. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're feeling generous, then please leave us a 5-star review with a few sentences. We are currently on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. I'd like to thank the following people for their inspiration and support. And this time around, I'm not really doing folks who are on the podcast networks and whatnot. I'm taking it personal. So these are all friends of your boy Snerts. So first up is the Cossack family. If you live in the Oceanside area and need music lessons, then check out CossackStudios.com. There's the Tucker family, which are a group of wonderful people. The Eichberg family. And if you like drum and bass, then look up Vertigo. And if you're into the Los Angeles area and you want to check out a D&D show, I recommend Timeless. It's about once every few months these days, but it's still a kick-ass party. Finally, I would like to thank the Friday Night Movie crew, Josh, Louie, and even though he barely shows up, John. Did I say finally? Of course I didn't mean finally, because there's Dr. Moxford, the raddest fan of them all. And the Moyer family. Want to hear more from your old pal Snerts? Then check out the PlayStation Experience on your podcast platform of choice. I can also be found on most of the things at Lord_Snerts. Robin, any outro or plugs?
Yes, I just want to thank anybody listening to this, especially somebody that I've known as an older brother since I was born. Will Greer showing some interest out there. Will, I hope you're enjoying the show. But thank you to anybody listening and everybody listening. Give us a like and a follow. Help us build this into something that will really be fun to do for years to come.
Excellent. And our goal is to get this next episode out on June 9th. So hopefully we'll make that. And it's going to be a banger of a 5th episode. Robin picked You Only Move Twice, and I picked Lemon of Troy. Spoiler warning, this might be fives all around for the Krusty Brand seal of approval, but you're going to have to tune in next time to figure that out, folks. So until then, smell you later, true believers.
I can't believe we placed that.